Discussed now with Republican Senator Todd Young of Indiana. He's on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who also served as a U.S. Marine. Senator, thanks for joining us. American officials are now plainly stating that the goal of the U.S. is to see Russia's military so weakened that an invasion like this could never happen again by them. At the start of the war, however, President Biden insisted that he didn't want to turn this into a contest between the U.S. and Russia or NATO and Russia. So what do you make of this change in tone and goal?
Well, listen, to the extent the change in tone has been that we are actually going to help the Ukrainians win this war as opposed to lose slowly, I think that's been very positive. I think the weakened state of the Russian economy, the Russian military, and the Russian state's diplomatic respect in the world will take care of itself. It'll be a byproduct of our unified efforts in the West to ensure that we properly resource the Ukrainians and help see them through to a victory.
Do you think that this kind of language and explicitly stated goal will take off the table any possible future peace deal, or is it really irrelevant?
You know, I don't want to overstate the extent to which it will make less possible a peace deal. I do think that we should be a lot more focused in our public statements about doing whatever it takes to ensure that Ukrainians win militarily. And we also need to be focused on ensuring that the United States is perceived as in this to stay, in this for the long haul. And one way we can do that through concrete measures as opposed to things behind podiums would be to ensure that we are able to get in place the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine as soon as possible, open that embassy back up. We heard from Secretary of State Blinken before the Foreign Relations Committee today that there are now diplomats on the ground in Lviv investigating how to make that happen. But we ought to bring that nominee to a vote so that we have an ambassador in place ASAP. And then when it comes to resourcing the Ukrainians, currently, Jake, it takes 72 hours between a request for certain materiel to be sent and for that to be delivered. We ought to be identifying ways to expedite that. There's a piece of legislation over in the House of Representatives that would reconstitute a form of Lend-Lease program that could compress that timeline somewhat. And lastly, we really need to be pressing our European allies who've been on balance pretty good so far, but we need to press them to provide whatever Russian materiel, Russian armaments they have that the Ukrainians already know how to use and we can get into their hands. You know, as I colloquially say from time to time, if it shoots, we ought to be sending it.
Yeah. Your colleague, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, expressed concern today that the U.S. will, quote, get further pulled in to the war against Russia. Are you worried as well? What would the fallout look like?
No, listen, we have to properly modulate our response, but if anything, I think we've been a little slow to be responsive to the needs of the Ukrainian military and their military effort. Right now, the greater weakness to the United States is not getting pulled in too much. It's instead doing too little. And if you look at the current map, allowing the Russian military to get their sea legs back, secure the Donbass, eastern Ukraine region, get a stronghold developed across the Baltic Sea and into Moldova, and then it becomes much more difficult to push back the Russian military. Instead, we need to resource the Ukrainians when they're asking for it right now.
Congresswoman Victoria Sparks, who is a Republican from Indiana and also Ukrainian-born, she and Congressman Walberg sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State today requesting a U.S. military attaché presence as part of this returning diplomatic presence of the U.S. in Ukraine, and also to keep oversight over all this military aid that the U.S. is sending. Do you agree with that? And is it important for the U.S. to really make sure that all the spending that is going on is being done correctly and without any corruption going on in the United States?
One would think this would be done in conjunction with reopening the embassy. So the proper sequencing is immediately. Let's vote on the ambassador. Let's open the embassy, and then let's locate a defense attaché at that facility or in the country operating out of that embassy. But I do agree with Congresswoman Spartz, who incidentally has shown incredible leadership on behalf of her own constituents and the broader Ukrainian American diaspora.
And happens to be a fellow Hoosier. Senator
That's
Todd
right.
Young of Indiana, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today, sir.
Thank you, Jay.
Coming